Something was happening very wrong in that hospital. I was born and raised in a little town called Maplewood, Pennsylvania. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and life was simple. My dad was a mechanic, and my mom ran the only grocery store in town. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. Growing up, I was just like any other kid, curious, always exploring the woods near our house, getting into trouble here and there. But what really got me were the stories the old folks in town would tell. Ghost stories mostly. Haunted houses, creatures in the woods, that sort of thing. I loved hearing them, but I never really believed in any of it. Fast forward a few years, and I'm in my early 20s, trying to figure out what to do with my life. There weren't many jobs in Maplewood, so I ended up taking a job as a security guard at St. Mary's Hospital in the city. It was a pretty old building, built way back in the early 1900s. The place had history, that's for sure. The walls seemed to whisper secrets, and sometimes, late at night, you could hear strange noises echoing through the empty halls. I didn't pay much attention to it, though. I figured it was just the building settling, or maybe a rat scurrying around. My job was mostly uneventful. I worked the night shift, so it was pretty quiet. I'd make my rounds, check the doors, make sure everything was locked up. It wasn't exactly thrilling, but it paid the bills. Most nights, I was alone in those long, dimly lit corridors. The place had a way of playing tricks on your mind. The shadows seemed to move when you weren't looking, and sometimes I'd hear faint whispers, but I always shrugged it off. I told myself it was just the wind or my imagination. But then came that night. The night that changed everything. It was a cold, rainy night, one of those nights where the wind howls and the rain pelts against the windows like it's trying to get in. I was making my rounds, just like any other night, when I heard it. A faint noise coming from one of the old deserted wings of the hospital. The East Wing, if I remember right. That part of the building hadn't been used in years. Not since they'd moved most of the patients to the newer section. At first I thought it was just the wind, but as I got closer, I realized it was something else. It sounded like footsteps, slow and dragging, like someone was shuffling across the floor. My heart started pounding in my chest, but I told myself it was probably just a homeless person who'd somehow gotten inside. It wouldn't have been the first time. I followed the noise down the hallway, my flashlight barely cutting through the darkness. The air was cold, colder than it should have been, and there was this smell, like something rotten. When I turned the corner, I saw her. She was standing at the end of the hallway, her back to me. She was wearing a hospital gown, the kind they give patients, but something was off. Her legs were all wrong. They were bent backward, twisted in a way that shouldn't have been possible. I froze, my heart in my throat. For a moment, I thought it was just a trick of the light. Or maybe I was seeing things. But then she turned around. I'll never forget what I saw. Her eyes, they were black, completely black. Like there was nothing there but darkness. And that smile, it was twisted, unnatural, like her face had been stretched into a grin. But the worst part was the way she moved. She didn't walk, she ran, her twisted legs carrying her toward me faster than anything human should be able to move. I didn't think, I just turned and ran. I could hear her behind me, those awful, twisted legs slapping against the floor. But the sound was wrong, like bones breaking with each step. The lights flickered above me as I ran, and I could feel her getting closer, her breath cold against my neck. I wanted to look back, to see how close she was, but I knew if I did, I wouldn't make it out of there. I ran faster than I ever thought I could, my feet pounding against the tiles as I raced toward the main entrance. My lungs were burning, my legs felt like they were going to give out, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't let her catch me. Just as I reached the doors, I heard a scream, a high-pitched, blood-curdling scream that echoed through the hallway. I don't know if it was her or me, but it was enough to push me through those doors and out into the cold night. The moment I crossed the threshold, everything went silent. The footsteps stopped, the lights stopped flickering, and the cold, oppressive feeling that had been pressing down on me vanished. I stood there, gasping for breath, staring back at the hospital. She was gone, but I knew she was still there, hiding in the shadows, waiting. I quit the next morning, told my boss I couldn't do it anymore, and I packed up and went back to Maplewood. I never told anyone what happened that night. Not really. I mean, who would believe me? But I can still feel her eyes on me. Even now, like she's watching, waiting for the right moment to come back. I don't go back to the city much anymore, and I stay away from hospitals whenever I can. But every now and then, when the wind howls just right, or when I'm alone at night, I think about her. About what I saw, and about how close I came to never making it out of that hospital. And I wonder if she's still there, haunting those halls, waiting for the next poor soul to come across her path.